There was a guy named Heel Hellhord. He was an assistant city attorney. He got fired from a city in Santa something, California, and then he got picked up by another city in Nasanani, where they have a big parade every year, Christmas or New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So he went from the Santa Nani to the Mamalema, and he was a former cop. So he started out as a cop, and he became an attorney while he was working as a cop. I guess he went to law school, and then he got fired from this place down in Orange County for trying to basically cook the books against a guy in jail, and you won't find it in the records anymore because he fought it all the way to the Supreme Court. I guess he got it expunged and cleaned out, and that's because he comes from Northern California. He went to UC Davis, and I suspect the reason they expunged it for him, turned it over at the Supreme Court, not U.S. Supreme Court, by the way, it's the California Supreme Court. It's because he's from Northern Cal, and those guys all have connections to each other. They help each other out. He's a white assistant attorney, by the way. So he's working at this this new office. He got picked up as an assistant city attorney at this new place where they have a big parade every year. And he gets a case against this guy who's in seminary. A pretty good guy, a young man, 30 years old or so, around the year 2000. This young man was in seminary, sincere about his faith and Christianity and trying to become a better person, more knowledgeable and better equipped. And also this young man was, I don't think 30 is really a young man, but that's the way they would describe it. It's the way they like to coin things, you know. Even up to age 40 now, they'll call you a young man. And this young man, so I'll use the same terminology even though I don't like it or agree with it. Was also a teacher. So he's a teacher and a seminary student. I mean, how much more exemplary can you get than that? You have to be in good standing to be both. To be either, and especially to be both. And one day, this young man is leaving seminary. So one day, the seminary student had a class at the school, at the seminary, where they have the big parade every year. And he had a break between this class and the next class, and he went driving up one of the big avenues to get something to eat. As he's approaching an intersection, he sees a green light, and continues forward as you normally do through the intersection. As he enters the intersection, another car going the opposite direction, or the crossway, enters in, and they're on a collision course. So the young man was driving through the intersection, and the other driver entered his path. As it turned out, she had entered a red light and was trying to get through the intersection through a red light. They avoided a serious collision. Their bumpers touched, no dent, maybe a little paint transfer. She had a newer vehicle, he had an older vehicle, and she thought she was superior to him. Asian lady, white male young man driver. But the police hadn't seen what had happened. They had heard, the brakes skidding in the near collision, and they pulled over right away, and they walked up just as the young man and the lady driver began to have a conversation. One of the police officers from this city where they have the big parade every year demanded to know what happened. He said, "We didn't see it." Quote, "We didn't see it, we heard it. What happened?" So the young man began to recite what happened. And at some point the lead officer was taking charge of the conversation, began blaming the young man, saying, "How could you have seen if she was coming your way, if there's a box truck there?" The young man hadn't said anything about seeing or not seeing anything. He just said that he saw a green light and continued forward. The police officer seemed to be implying that he should have been more cautious, even though the green light was green. And all the blame was heading towards the young man. The young man just objected, saying, "No, I saw a green light, I just went forward," etc., etc. The young man turned to head back to his car for a moment to get his insurance and driver's license, but the officer said something else, and the young man turned back around, and suddenly the officer pulled his baton and hit the young man in the stomach. And the next thing the young man knew, he was being roughed up by the two white male police officers. To be continued. So the young man, being in seminary at the time and a student and a substitute teacher as well, ended up in court because the police not only injured him and caused him to have chronic pain and permanent disability for life, but they had to justify what they were doing legally, so they had to find some way to charge him with something. So they drop it down to disturbing the peace from something else. And knowing they knew that the young man was working hard and busy as a student and as a teacher, he was not going to have time to fight something in court. So the young man decides to plead no contest to disturbing the peace. But he's not so defeated as to know that he has one more card in his hand to play. And he lets things settle down, seemingly settle down, but within the year time he files a motion with the court. Or he files a claim, actually, with the city, which is required before he can file a civil lawsuit. Of course, the claim was denied by the city, without, I'm sure, them actually even considering the claim, the young man. And then, right before the deadline for filing a civil lawsuit, he filed a lawsuit against the city of Pasadena. Oops, a city up there in the hill. Strike that. Trying to keep the actual names and location a little bit vague here. And so it goes to court. And the city puts one of their assistant city attorneys on the case. Real hell of a Ford guy. Who would you call him? A hell of a Ford guy, I'd call him. He starts out kind of nice, you know. The young man's doing all the legal work himself. He doesn't hire an attorney. He's doing this all in pro per, or propria persona, as they say. Which apparently attorneys hate, because it makes things that much harder for them to do, opposing attorneys. And things start out kind of nice. The young man does a deposition of one of the police officers, and after the deposition, he hears the attorney and the police officer arguing. You know, initially it appeared like the city attorney was going to be on the side of the young man. Things continue to transpire little by little, more depositions, a little more conflict between the young man and the assistant city attorney. Assistant city attorney starts sending, you know, obnoxious letters that are insulting towards the young man, accusatory. Starts making phone calls that are alarming. And eventually, the young man starts getting very uncomfortable with the antics and tactics of the assistant city attorney. By the way, the assistant city attorney had just been fired from another city because of his dubious conduct in regards to a man who was arrested, sat in jail, and had a conflict with police. There was question about whether this assistant attorney withheld information wrongfully from the opposing side. Apparently the city, his boss didn't like what this guy had done and decided to fire this attorney, but the attorney got picked up in this other city, of course. And later I saw, or the young man saw, that this city attorney had done something similar in another case later on, withholding evidence. And so things continued to develop with this assistant city attorney, who happened to also be a former police officer. All of this the young man discovered over time as he was researching the case, putting together a case.